Father wants to be buried in a pinstripe suit. Says give him a money clip full of loot and a funkadelic record. Uncle Jam wants you. Me, I imagine cremation, ashes released at Joshua Tree or into the Pacific. Cliche, I've thought. So now opt for the plot beside my mother. Maybe we'll talk. Maybe our voices will mix into a stew. Bone mash, an echoing shadow. Wouldn't care how they dressed me as long as I was cleaned and touched with love before I was put away to rot. I think more people should get massages. Face down in the nude, someone pushing love into you. Not a luxury, the receptionist at Massage Envy says. A necessity. Probably not, but I bought a membership. Buried alongside my mother, grandma, grandpa, uncles, and aunts. A whole clan of us. The admission, blood, family squabbles, awkward kisses, one cheek or two, dare for lips. I never asked Dad if he wanted to be buried with his prosthetic legs. Surely he'd need them. Surely they'd be fast and secure when he got up to rise.
Oh, thank you for reading that poem, Knee Deep, from your book Testify.
Thanks, Nancy.
I love the third stanza of this poem, particularly the lines, wouldn't care how they dressed me as long as I was cleaned and touched with love before I was put away to rot. And then you transition that sentiment into, I think more people should get massages, and even to the idea of membership with your family. It's interesting to think about the idea of physical affection and touch as an essential part of the human experience, particularly right now, as we're being encouraged not to have contact with one another because of COVID-19. Do you think that simply belonging to membership of family can be enough? Do you think that's something that as Americans we lack?
Right now, it's really hard when you wear a body that looks like mine or minoritized in any fashion to feel as though you have membership in the American family, not only because of COVID, but also, of course, because of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and Deion Johnson, and all the countless others who have been slain. And so it's hard to feel membership, but I do think the belief in an America is literally the only thing that's binding this country together, and that has bind us together is this belief. And we've always fallen drastically short of what we aspire to, but I think that belief is something that can hold us together and has held us together before. But I was really interested in your notion of touching and physicality, especially of right now. I do feel like that this book, in a way, is a reach out to be touched back by the family and to feel included by my family, and not even just blood family, but like the Black community at large, which I've always kind of felt on the periphery of a lot of self-induced reasons why, but also external as well. I'll admit that. And so, yeah, I think, but all that idea of membership and who gets in and gets out. But as far as like on the big macro scale of the American membership, I think, it's going to take some action on the group of power to extend rights and liberties and justice to underrepresented and minoritized group in ways that we haven't seen these last 2 weeks. I mean, I just keep on thinking of Amy Cooper. And yeah, it's not only a cop being willing to have their knee on a guy's neck for 9 minutes. It's also the white imagination that is willing to, I mean, all I can do is laugh because that's how horrible it is, but willing to, leverage her power like that to put that Black body in that precarious space. So just so much we're fighting in. So I think it takes more than belief in family for that.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned Amy Cooper too, because it's just like, I mean, she's definitely not an isolated incident. It's a widespread problem, but this tendency to jump to such a dramatic conclusion, like, or to like to such, yeah, it's like this imagination, this white imagination that's just
Yeah.
running away with itself and having very real and dangerous consequences, sometimes deadly consequences.
She could have killed him.
Yeah.
We know that factually. She could have
Yeah.
killed him.
Yeah.
All because she wanted her dog unleashed in her way, and she wanted to live her life
Yeah.
as free and as white, and then under the American dream of whiteness, with all that that has, and just run Central Park, because Central Park is, I mean, and then when you couple with, you know, how the enforcement of wearing masks and stuff is so lackadaisical in Central Park versus the way it is in the Bronx, and how people are getting, you know, beat up for not wearing masks or being covered properly. And then Central Park, I mean, when you add that into the discussion as well, the racialized manner and the classist manner in which we've been enforcing those kind of laws, and you add that into that conversation as well, it just even gets uglier. It gets uglier the more and more you scratch at it. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying. I hope I answered your question about membership.
Is it a question that can never be completely answered, or just continue to be discussed so we can find, I don't know, ways to treat each other with respect?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the cool parts about that poem and that particular stanza is that,
Yeah.
you know, we do all these kind of moments of love to each other that we don't even think of. My partner was a receptionist at Massage Envy for a long time when we were in undergrad, you know, and so of course I got massages, and I always think about, you know, even though of course it's an act of service because you give somebody money, but it's like a really nice thing to do to somebody, you know, just to somebody to take care of somebody in that manner. And yeah, and you know, of course, you know, being flat made me, you know, immediately this associative mind went to thinking about dying, because you know, if you're like me and your mom dies when you're 8, you think about dying all the time, unfortunately.
Totally.
And yeah, that's where all the kind of associative brain, if I was going to try to reverse engineer the poem of how it makes the leaps, that's where you get that nice leap of like leaping from like the flat body dead and thinking about the body prostrate in that fashion to the rhetorical gesture of going to the then since I thought about, you know, since I've always felt outside of my family, then that's of course what gets to that idea of like, well, you know, you have to buy a membership to Massage Envy. Have I ever earned my membership in my family? And because of things that they've done, family members, and because again, I want to not act like that I'm not culpable here, but of actions I've done as well, like I don't know if I've earned my membership in my family as much as I would want to. And that's micro family, blood family, and sometimes the Black community too at large. And I'm trying to rectify all that. And this book
Yeah.
wrestles with all that.
I like the final image of the poem of your father rising with his prosthetic legs secured to him. When we imagine the afterlife, we think of people being returned to something like a living state where they have some kind of body. And I'm curious why you chose to imagine your father with his prosthetic legs rather than with his own legs.
I'm culturally Catholic forever, you know, because of all that Catholic school mass 3 times a week for all those years. So, you know, it informs my whole image system, my whole image inventory, my thinking. You know, sometimes I do things that are just so unabashedly Catholic without even thinking about it. And I'm always fighting against that. So I think kind of his body being dismembered even in the afterlife kind of could be said as a, you know, a metaphor for how I feel about religion in general. Like that, you know, I think that it's really important for people's lives, and I know how important it is for people's lives, but it's just something that doesn't really speak to me or does work for me anymore in those kind of ways. So it's weird for me to even imagine an afterlife. And if I did, it's weird for me to imagine it without imagining it being imbued with our politics and what we are here, because it's an imaginary space made by our imaginations. So of course I feel like it'd be like us, you know. So for me, I can't imagine an afterlife in which like his legs aren't there, because that matters so much in this life. Testify. I swear on the melody of trumpet vines, ants feasting through animal crackers, birds, bees, Tyler Perry movies, my daddy's 38 slug. Footy, socks, inside high top Jordans, disidentification, drag queens, blonde dreadlocks, headstones, salt and pepper in the grass, vanilla wafers and banana pudding, Zeus swan chasing, blunt guts, sharp thumbnails, keloid scars, cash only bars, R&B songs, on with the pot called the kettle. I put that on my mama's good hair, on playing solitaire with a phantom limb, the white woman I go home to, auntie's face when she says, you know, he always loved them pink toast. I put that on everything. On the signifiers I gobble up, candlesticks blown out by whistling lips. I put that on dervishing records scratched on downbeats, empty beehives, fresh fade head slaps, hand claps, bamboo shoots, liminality, mestizos, the purple black crook of my arm. Split sternums on you can't save him now. I put that on skinny jeans, get rich schemes, gotta get that cream, know what I mean? Freckled black faces, leafless trees throwing up gang signs, phlegm hocked onto the streets. I swear I catch more stones than catfish. I lose more collard greens in sleep. I think nothing is down here but us darkies, high yellows, red bones, cocoa butters. Someone, no, everyone has jungle fever. Don't touch my forehead. Blonde as moonshine, mute trombone choking. I post that on Instagram. Post me to the endless chain of signifiers. Strawberry gashes on kneecaps. Let me get some dab. Newports, cools, and folding chairs instead of bar stools. That white drool caked on your face. Mommy, please wipe away the veil. I thought I was passing into the eye of the street lamp. I swear, I promise on fawnless palm trees, long pinky nails, 16 years serve 8, and Miss Addie's red bean and rice. Old dirty bastard and the brother on the cream of wheat box. It don't mean a thing if it don't. Buckle your knees, open your hands, I'll give you a song, give you the Holy Ghost from the preacher's greasy palm. When he hit me, I didn't fall, felt eyes jabbing me and tagging me. Oh no, he didn't! Give you the arm from the small of her back. I put that on double consciousness, multiple jeopardy, and performativity. Please make sure my feathers and manacles are tight. Yeah, baby, I like bottomless bullet chambers. I swear on the creation of Uncle Tom, some white woman's gospel. She got blue eyes, you know I love me some. On Josiah Henson, the real Uncle Tom. On us still believing in Uncle Tom. Lord have mercy. I put that on the black man standing on my shoulders holding his balls. I put that on the black man I am. I am not. On the black man I wish I was.
I wanted to hear you read this poem because it's got so much great internal rhyme and imagery, and it speaks so strongly to this moment that we're living in. Um, Post me to the endless chain of signifiers reminds me of the social media that we consume and also consumes us. And do you think that social media has changed the way you reflect on yourself? Or do you think it's affected the way you write as a poet?
Um, so I quit social media about, I think, 6 months before my book came out. And of course, that was the time of the election in 16. And I remember being so horrified about so many friends who I went to high school with and that I've known along the way and are still their friends on Facebook and following them on Twitter and stuff. And just the way they talked about race and class and all the issues and just all the rhetoric surrounding this 2016 election. And for me, it became a space that was way too toxic. And you combine that with my insecurities as a writer that a lot of us share, of like kind of the measuring myself against other people. And so I haven't been on social media since 2016. Of course, I'm able to sleuth by, looking at other people's Twitters and such, and or my partner has shown me something that she's seen from her feeds. So I still stay involved, and I think that social media has done awesome things for promoting literature. I think more people are getting exposed to cooler poems than ever before, and like more voices in the poetry community. I think
Hmm.
it's incredible what people are doing, but for me, it's just not a healthy space. So I do think that that line is me kind of laying down my gauntlet of how I feel about it. That I do sometimes feel it's like performative and performative for for performativity's sake rather than for an ends. But then at the same time, I know that all the organizing that's happening right now with the protests would be impossible without it. And as I say that, and level that critique, I'm literally searching people's social media right now so I know what's happening. And I think the other thing, if I'm honest with myself, is I'm also a very kind of reactionary person. So I know for a fact that if I was trying to tweet as much as a lot of people tweet and as awesomely and as cleverly as a lot of people tweet, that I would say something that I have no business saying eventually. So
Yeah.
that's my take on social media. But yeah, no, when I found that line, needless to say, I that every now and again the magic works, and because this is a very elliptical associative poem that I've been trying to write for years. Um, and yeah, so when I found that one, it was one of the times when I was like, yay, that's a good one, that's a good one. So yeah.
That always feels good.
Yeah, every now and again.
So the poem feels very personal, very rooted in your life and your personal experiences, yet it becomes like a fugue that takes on bigger questions of culture and race. And we've already touched on this a little bit because it runs throughout your book, but would you please tell me about how this poem got started and then grew into this self-reflection on your life, on Black iconography, and also maybe even iconoclasm?
Since undergrad, I've been trying to work on a piece called Confessions of an Uncle Tom. And so it's been an essay before. There was a presentation I gave before where like I had found this really sad picture of Louis Armstrong looking sad, like just like really, really sad. And
Hmm.
you always see Louis Armstrong looking so happy. And how Miles Davis and many of, in the free jazz afterwards kind of talked about Louis like he was a Tom. And so like I got to kind of inspecting that idea. And of course, I've always been drawn to Robert Hayden, who was also called Tom by Amir Baraka and such, and other people in the Black Arts movement. And I found myself, in County Cullen as well. I've attracted to him, and of course, Langston Hughes is talking about him in the Racial Mountain when he talks about the black poet who doesn't want to be known as a black poet, but just a poet. So I've been wrestling with this, and then as somebody again growing up, how I grew up, kind of as a double kid, if you will, living in a very, very black neighborhood in Anderson, Indiana. Anderson's a very segregated city. On the west side of Anderson is where west side and south side are where most of the black folk live. And then going to school at a predominantly white school kind of doubled me off. So it's always been something I've been interested in because I've always kind of felt like I've straddled both communities, and in very weird ways, and been shunned and embraced by both communities in very weird and interesting ways. And again, I did some of this my own self. Um, but yeah, so the poem has started with that idea and me trying to find my footing in the notion of Uncle Tom and what does that really mean, and if the term Uncle Tom does anything for the kind of blackness that I would like to be comfortable with expressing about myself. And my dad, was part of the little Black Panther I guess chiefs or deputies in Anderson, at least trying to be, and grew up respecting that kind of militancy as well. And was even involved in a race riot in Anderson in the '70s at the high school where they closed down the school. So I kind of always felt that my pose of blackness didn't live up to that
Hmm.
pose, and felt way more watered down in Uncle Thomas. And it brought me great shame. So there's a part of me who wishes that I was Malcolm X meets Amiri Baraka meets Chuck D meets Rakim. You know what I mean? And I wasn't. And there's a part of me that also knows that that pose of black masculinity is problematic for so many reasons. Oftentimes sexism, oftentimes homophobia. And this is not to discount
Hmm.
how important the affirmation and pose of black power and black pride was, but I
Hmm.
think it's irresponsible not to talk about the toxic masculinity that's also a part of that movement. And so I want to be as strong as those figures without some of their blind spots. And I have so many blind spots, and I'm a recovering sexist. I've heard that term thrown around a lot, and I know that I haven't been the best person that I'm supposed to be on those fronts, and I'm still learning, trying to do better. But I think this poem, and why it ends up being the kind of the title poem, the titular
Hmm.
poem for this, is that this whole project, and I think almost everything that I've written, is either about mourning my mother
Yeah.
or not feeling black enough. Like if I
Hmm.
really start scratching at things and whatever blackness means. And that's why
Hmm.
it's really also important that we move past these kind of monolithic notions of blackness. And I think this is another thing that this text is trying to do. It's really kind of hampering down on all my insecurities of wanting to be a certain blackness but not being able to find a way to be that, and also being suspicious of being that as well. And it kind of lines up with my suspicions of religion too. It's those are the kind of other big arc is I believed in a god that could do certain things and then realized that that god in my mind doesn't really exist, or at least act in that fashion. And I believed in a certain kind of blackness in a certain way as well, and thought that that would do something, and it didn't really do that for me as well. So this book is also, I say it's a Bildungsroman, and it's a Bildungsroman about kind of a loss of innocence, of like losing faith in ideas that used to sustain me. Bad son. Ghost hang from hooks. I don't know myself in past pictures. In the Polaroid days, I was a high top fade with a lip smile. Just lost my two front teeth. Didn't want who to see? Probably me. Can't remember what staring in the mirror felt like then. Probably something like taking off skates and feeling shorter but stronger. No. The present presses and mints the past into a gold coin you can't spend anywhere. A savings account with negative interest. I had dreads in high school, wore almost a pound of hemp, sandals, my shoes of choice, amber and shea butter, my smell. Dad transferred to Anderson's jail, more charges pending. I didn't visit him.
Whew. There's a lot I admire about this poem, if you'll bear with me. Uh,
Mhm.
I love the lines, the present presses and mints the past into a gold coin you can't spend anywhere. I think that captures how we carry around some memories with us. They have the appearance of being valuable, but many of them aren't helpful to us and can actually weigh us down. Um, I'm also given pause by the lines. In the Polaroid days, I was a high top fade and a lip smile. Um, at first, I love this because I love the image that you created. And I also like the way you're looking at yourself the same way that many classic poets like Shakespeare have looked upon others, usually upon their beloveds. But then as I thought about it more, I saw how that line recognizes that individuals are often reduced to their features. And more interesting in this poem, it's your present self or someone similar to your present self, seeing your past self as another distinct person in that kind of reductive way. Um, it's that same reductive viewpoint that makes it easy to reduce your past identity to bad son, right? So I guess what I'm leading to, thank you for bearing with me, is do you feel like creating that distance between your past and present selves gives you perspective as a writer? Does writing about your memories help you to process them? Do you think it can be therapeutic, or does it sometimes make you relive trauma that can put you into a negative space?
So I think for me, the first thing I think about is that Frost quote that, poetry is a momentary stay against madness. And so, yeah, only momentary. Like, I don't think in a way that we think of catharsis now really doesn't apply, at least for my writing process. I don't want to speak for everybody. Like, I don't think it like fixed me, or if a person is to be fixed. And I don't even think those kind of ideas are relevant towards, edification, moving on, fixing oneself. So for me, no, I don't know if the distance helped or anything. I think, even though it sounds very maudlin and very kind of sentimental or over dramatic, I think, you just get better at being sad. You learn how to be in that space. That's what I think that life gives you. So no, I don't think, that it fixes things or makes them better, except for like those kind of momentary moments of self-reflection, like when I read it, or like when somebody like really feels it and reads it as closely and lovingly as you have read these, which again, thank you so much. But for me, no, I don't think of it like that. I think that it perhaps can have catharsis for the reader, because I think it's very cool to be able to, see somebody else suffering in ways that you felt like you suffered. Baldwin has that quote, "Do you think you're the only person in the world that suffers?" And then you read. So I think that, there's perhaps catharsis, because I felt catharsis. Like first time I heard those Winter Sundays. What did I know? What did I know? Love's a story in lonely offices. And even the beginning, Sundays too. My father got up early, just a cadence so amazing. I felt catharsis and felt real connection. But I don't know if it's like that for the writer, at least not for me personally. I think it's a little weird when writers get real swinging about other people's processes and like what other writers can do. But for me, no, I don't know if it like does that, if the distance helps. I think, you tell yourself a version of the past that you're comfortable with living with.
Mhm.
And, I think with this poem, it was me actually telling a version of the past that finally I wasn't comfortable with. And that's when things get real. And that's when, like, I think this book became a book. Because the version of the past that I live with is my father was a crackhead who abandoned me and who did a prison bed and was an awful person. And yeah, and so forget him. He abandoned me. What do I need to do? And so it's always everybody else is doing something to me, and that all those things are true. But I think when this book got more legs is when I start thinking about the ways in which I'm complicit towards some of the things that are problematic in my life. And so, here's one narrative. I could do that narrative that I just told you about my father, but the other narrative is my father is somebody whose dreams were deferred his whole life. He also comes from a broken home, and he came of age during the crack epidemic in America, which many of us now feel like wasn't accidental and was a very
Mhm.
purposeful thing that happened. And that's another whole long history lesson, but definitely think it's true. And so when I think about if I would have came of age during that time, I have an addictive personality. Um, I've had trouble with drugs and addiction problems in my own life. And so I start to think about if I would have came of age and if I had a young son and his mother died, a woman who I wanted to be with but could never be with in the way that I wanted to because of my own self-destructive actions. um, Suddenly a lot of my father's decisions don't seem insane, don't seem selfish, don't seem as baffling as they did when I was younger, and this is after being in the world for some while and, for a while and making some really bad choices myself. And so then suddenly, I think about being him who's made all these bad choices. And even though it's messed up that you're getting transferred to the hometown, probably the only thing you're hoping is the good thing about getting transferred here is maybe my son to come see me. And I could have, and I didn't. And there's a lot of things with my dad's family that I regret a lot about decisions that I've made. But I think that was one of the real kind of turning moments in this book is when I start thinking about me and how what I would do if I was put in the position of a lot of people who I had critiqued. This book again is about it's a coming of age story and it's about losing faith in a lot of meta narratives. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's another meta narrative that the speaker lost faith in. I think the speaker
Mm-hmm.
lost faith in the meta narrative of family,
Mm-hmm.
of what a black person should be, like, you know, these assumptions of
Mm-hmm.
blackness, these assumptions of masculinity, these assumptions of religion. And yeah, I think you can also even throw assumptions of self in there as well
Mm-hmm.
for. But yeah, this book is about the failure of speakers stopping to believe in meta narratives.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a really good way to think about it, actually, and I hadn't thought about that before.
Well, thank you for talking to me, for reading to me, reading to the world,
Oh,
and
thank you.
it was a pleasure.
Well, I hope I answered your question. Then thank you for your close reading.
It's great.
Seriously, so awesome and so caring. Like to be read with that much care is just so awesome. And you know, there's so many combative readings that are done these days.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that kind and generative reading. Thank you.
My pleasure
I appreciate
completely.
this.
Thank you. Thank you for writing it.